view, we're talking this morning, all things considered, the politics of our country, looking at the government since its inception 1 year ago, as we wind down to the celebration of another year, milestone year of His Excellency taking on the helm of responsibility of Liberia. From a general outlook of things, how would you describe the first year?
Well, I describe it as very successful. Taking into consideration we still have challenges. We will always have challenges. We walk into a situation that was highly anticipated, though unacceptable. The president started off by saying that he inherited a broke government and a bad economy. What does that say? A broke government. You already ain't got no money. Then on top of it, the economy is bad. So from the get-go, the moment he put his foot down, he had challenges. And so, but his willingness to confront challenges has always been there. From his youthful days, going on the barrel practice ground, and imagine they put a jersey on you to take it off. You don't give up. You go to IE, and then you go through the Simple Hydro tournament. You end up in Douala, Cameroon, and then they tell you you're not fit enough, you're lazy, and then you come out as the best. You go to Monaco, you become the best. You go to Paris Saint-Germain, you become the best. You go to Milan, and onwards, you go on. All of the challenges you face, nothing ever stops you from succeeding. So there were challenges from the get-go, but we can describe it as very successful. Why we say so? Because there is this unspoken, I repeat, unspoken policy of constructive defiance. Constructive defiance. The unspoken policy of, constructive defiance, wherein you say you will never get a military clinic. Well, you got a military hospital that's nearing completion. We'll never be able to pay our student YX fees. Hey, come on. It's being paid and it will be paid for the next 12 years. And I say 12 because I'm confident. You got all the countries in the world struggling with tertiary tuition, whether they can render their institutions tuition free. Well, in the fourth poorest nation in the world, tuition free now is for all public universities and colleges. We can go on and on and on. I have my colleague here. I can catalog everything with my eyes closed. So we can say very successful, but at the end of the day, we have challenges. The roads is not part of it. The economy, you know what was happening. It was hemorrhaging. You know how he handled it. Look at agriculture today. Just 3 days ago, we had 25 million credit line established for small-scale farmers. We have a credit line, a check that was given to LBDI, 3 million, with an additional 2 million to come forward, hopefully, from the World Bank for small-scale businesses. We can go on and on and on and on. It's so much so that this unspoken policy of constructive defiance is in full swing.
From this standpoint, what would you say?
Well, I would just like to pick up from where my colleagues taught, and relative to the, the loan scheme, the $3 million has been out there for small businesses. That is with the knowledge that the private sector is the engine of growth in our country. The World Bank has realized that the government is making specific and deliberate effort to improve the economy, and so they've said, well, we're not just going to leave this to the government. You have your meager resources and you can put it at the disposal of small businesses, but with certain benchmarks, if you reach, we can increase that amount to about $5 million with an addition of $2 million, and that's what is obtaining now. But he spoke about the fact that the president has come under continuous criticisms from the days of his youth. Whether it was in Cameroon or he first stopped in France and then onward to become the world best player. He has been continuously criticized. One moment it was that he dribbles too much or that he is too lazy, but then he went on to become the world best. You remember you had a meeting with the journalist when he did say that, he relished the level of criticism. It inspires him, to do more. And he's repeated that on several occasions. And that's why we're beginning to see some of the developments that we are seeing. Just this morning, I was reading the African Development Bank's African Economic Outlook for Liberia. And what it said was that the economy rebounded. Contrary to some of the speculations out there, people have said that things were going downhill, that the economy was doing so badly, and that George Weah, the president of Liberia, wasn't capable, and his team, they weren't capable of improving our economy. But that's quite to the contrary, what the African Development Bank is beginning to say. They've said that the economy rebounded by 3.2% last year alone. And that is because of, according to them, and this is, I'm not making this up. They've said, they've said because of prudent fiscal and monetary measures. So you can tell that some of the criticism that being, thrown at the doorsteps of the finance minister or people at it, because the finance minister, is responsible for fiscal policies, and whereas the central bank is responsible for some of the monetary policies. Both of them combined, the economic management team, last year to reduce the level of inflation in Liberia, which grew by about 27%. They made some interventions. There were interventions with the $25 million, which became a topical issue. The minister came on here and explained. But then again, a small group of politicians sought to skew that and distort it. As always, everything the president does, some of them are significant as improving the rules. But then they will be talking about the color of his suits, the color of the clothes he wears and stuff like that. That's how desperate our politicians have become. But I'd like to talk about some of those substantive as far as that report is concerned. They said that the outlook for 2019 is really good. Not only that the economy improved by 3.2%, the GDP improved by 3.2%. There were talk of it improving by 2.5 to 3%. We've surpassed that to 3.2%. They're saying that in 2019 it might improve by 4.7%. And like I said, I want to come back to the point. Because of prudent fiscal and monetary policies of this government under the leadership of President George Weah, but stalwarts in those particular sectors, Minister Samuel Tuer and not Patriot, Minister Samuel Tuer, Minister Samuel Tuer that is controls the fiscal policies, whereas not Patriot does the monetary policies. They've also talked about the fact that the exchange rate has stabilized, and this discounts all of the negative thoughts that have been out there. They've said, the minister wasn't capable of stabilizing the exchange rate, and that the $25 million infusion. In fact, it wasn't $25 million; it was $15 million that was infused. $25 million was projected to be, but $15 million was infused, and it's led to the stabilization of the exchange rate, which was of inflation generally, the exchange rate, and then generally inflation. Inflation was increasing last year by about 27%, and so we've stabilized that. This is all done under the leadership of the president that many say wasn't capable. They didn't have the technical know-how. They didn't have the level of sophistication.
They didn't even have a plan.
They didn't have a plan to improve the economy.
Because when the president, during his inaugural address said, my government will be based on a pro-poor agenda.
Exactly.
People around, what does pro-poor mean? By what extension? We didn't see a national blueprint. We began to hear it, but in a record time of 7 months, it was launched.
Yeah. What I would say to that, for example, we all went to school, and some of the little guys pretend not to have sat in a classroom. The first thing they try to disparage it. The truth of the matter is, everyone knows what pro-abortion is, pro-human rights movement. But somehow they could not understand, or you could say pro-government demonstration, but they could not understand what pro-poor meant. If you have pro-abortion, pro-human rights, pro-government, how come you don't understand what pro-poor is? But at the end of the day, it's what they do best. Now that they saw the plan come forward in a record time of 7 months, that had to tie in with the mantra of the Coalition for Democratic Change under this president and his vision for the country, in the direction of, for example, Pillar 1, that had to do with power to the people, where you empower Liberians to take control of their own destiny by building the human capacity and what have you. You had economy and jobs, Pillar 2. You had sustaining the peace, Pillar 3. You had governance and transparency. All of these things set into motion. The next thing we heard are people saying, where you have a plan, but we're looking forward to the implementation. We got 6 years to go. You only had 8 months and you're making noise. And if we got 6 years to go, following through on the plan, the president was very careful at the university as a visitor. On the day he declared the state-run institution tuition-free, he was very careful to add that the implementation of his plans were already in full swing before the plan itself came out. And he cataloged a number of issues. For example, paying the WIAC fees. When you talk about education, okay? Turn around, he provided Wi-Fi and the digitalization with respect to the registration process there. Now he was out there that day to declare the state-run university and all the public colleges at the tertiary level tuition-free. Let's put education aside. Let's look at the healthcare sector. The plan was already in full swing when he allotted money, over $500,000, to the JFK for the renovation. Send 18 doctors overseas to specialize. Turn around, employ over 2,000 health workers. The plan was already in full swing. Build the 14th military hospital. Health. Let's go to agriculture. There are about 4 gigantic machines, rice mills, in the southeast. There are different programs. They call them extension workers, where people who graduate from agriculture colleges, as opposed to the past, where they just sat around doing nothing. They're now being incorporated to help farmers. That's in addition to other things. That was happening before the plan was launched. Let's go back to sustaining the peace. We can go on and on. The plan was in full swing. So when you have the likes of a relatively unknown political midget who will say that this government lacks the competence and lacks a vision, as far as he's concerned, he does not know where this government is headed. That's because you are a tourist and you're not following up with issues as they unfold.
When we look at the aspect of the rule of law in Liberia, what would you say would be a towering achievement in 1 year of the administration in terms of the rule of law and governance?
Well, the president has touted that the Constitution is going to be the benchmark with which he's going to govern. He said that during the State of the Nation address back in January of 2018, he cited several constitutional provisions, that he's going to govern by, and he's respected that so far. This is the only president. I mean, not the only, but at least in a long time, we haven't seen a president with such resolve, so much so as to, at the moment you hear that a managing director of an entity, is involved with some sort of impropriety, you immediately suspend him and then put him at the disposal of, obviously, our court system, and in order for him to go through this, the court process. But we should assume, that everybody is innocent. That's the maximum in law until proven guilty. So I just wanted to point out that he's absolutely resolved as far as the rule of law is concerned, but maybe specifically corruption, to weed out people who engage in malfeasance and other acts of impropriety. I remember when he met with expats, not expats, but diaspora Liberians, he did mention to them that I've been out there before. I've been a regular guy, and I know a number of stuff. I know a number of people, So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But at the end of the day, I have the public trust. I was entrusted with the presidency of the Republic of Liberia. By the way, he said, I'm not going to fail you. I'm not going to take from you what is not due me. But also, he specifically warned his public officials at that occasion that if you were to engage in malpractice, regardless of the fact that I know you, regardless of the fact that we were out there and maybe hanging out and stuff as regular people, as president of Liberia, I'm going to deal with you. And he did say that if you were engaged, if I found you, wanting of some sort of, accountability and stuff, I'm not going to employ you in my government anymore. What I wanted to point out is the fact that President George Weah has used his own money before becoming president for the education of Liberians, for maybe aiding other people as far as their personal needs are concerned. And so some of the times when you hear people talk about, probably he might be engaged in other stuff untoward, you some of the times get a little bit confused about what they're talking about, because this man uses personal funds to help you. He said that before, that hundreds of Liberians at the University of Liberia were on his scholarship, not just the University of Liberia, but all the universities across the country. And so now that he has the public trust, he's going to use that to benefit the people. He said that he's not going to take away from Liberians. He's demonstrated that on many occasions. I mean, this is just somebody that is extremely committed to developing the country. When you hear many times that...
You hear the criticism that the president has not done much in 1 year in the fight against corruption. And that he's building, refurbishing his home on 9th Street, and he's building, a presidential villa and all sorts of things. It shows that he's expending more than he brought to the public coffers, and his assets is still being shrouded in secrecy, though declared. What do you make of all these kinds of outbursts?
But before I take on that question, let me just buttress the question you asked, Boakai.
Okay.
When people feel marginalized, especially under the policy of exclusion that had, dogged our political system, our democracy, where, this person is Mandingo man, he got funny and he shouldn't be in the government. This person is too young and inexperienced to be in the government. These group of people are rebels. They like fighting. All of those things. This president was able to build a united government of inclusion where everyone was someone. And at the end of the day, that was one part that helped in sustaining the peace. The other part is to allow for press freedom. When you go after the press, for example, they come after you, and the image they build for you will be terrible. So he further doubled down on that by reintroducing the bill to decriminalize free speech. And he supported it through the lower house, is now in the upper house. However, under his administration, no journalists have been intimidated by the government. I say by the government for a reason. Flogged and in prison. No media houses banned or burned down. Journalists, we all know what's happening. This government have had more protests in the street than the 12 years under former President Madam Johnson Sirleaf. And we can boast of that. But each time they were on the streets, this government provided police escort, gave them water, provided them security, and a corridor to peacefully demonstrate. They didn't lead to any outbursts of anything. All of those things were a contributing factor in sustaining and maintaining the peace. Now, to answer your question, I wanted to go my Liberian way. Because when you said, why you make a daily mansion on our street, it's because they build their own in South Africa. So because we can't see it, we can only hear about it, we can comment. But let's really answer the question. You are talking about a former world best, where you argue about Ronaldo and Messi making 100 and something million.
Yeah.
You are talking about Europe's best, 3 times Africa best, Ballon d'Or winner, man down the entire continent, the world over, respected by presidents.
But you're also talking about a president whose son is a millionaire.
I was coming to that.
Exactly.
I want to deal with
whose son is a millionaire.
His wealth.
And then you're talking about building
one who
properties,
owns businesses around the world, mansions in places like Florida and other areas. He dines with kings that are billionaires. You talk about his wife, a banker, a businesswoman. The same Paris Saint-Germain that he played for to be able to carry the expenses, literally, of our country on his back. One man. It's the same Paris Saint-Germain his son signed for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's look at math. 1 bag of cement is placed at $7. 1 bag of cement gives you 30 blocks. So 10 bags of cement is $70. It will give you 300 blocks. So multiply $70, 10. Let's go for 100 bags of cement. It will be what? 700. So let's multiply the 300 blocks, okay, for every 10 stuff. You'll get 3,000 blocks.
But besides,
so why you want to make noise about people, millionaires building a house? It's because you couldn't build one yourself. Some of them still live in their parents' homes. and the records are there to show. So let me conclude on this, Boakai. If people are worried about the president building mansions, they should first of all do the math so that they come up with the idea of what a building would cost against what the son of His Excellency President George Weah signed with Paris Saint-Germain for. He can build half a Morovia, period.
The president declares his asset, but yet there are state claims that the asset is not made public.
But the thing is, nothing obligates the president to make his asset public, you know. I know that the laws basically say he should declare his asset. I've seen the asset declaration form. What's on there? You have not just banking information, personal banking information, but also spousal information. I know this because I myself had to fill up an asset declaration form. All of us had to fill up an asset declaration form, and you know that some of those information are basically personal.
Yeah, personal.
You know,
so until there is a criminal investigation,
exactly,
the law states that you cannot make it.
You cannot make
public.
your asset public.
And besides that, the law is very specific that if you so desire, then you must go through the court.
Yeah,
that's what the law says.
And by the way, there is a pending case that would have served as a precedent. I remember, I think that was back in 2014 or something, that somebody filed freedom of information, something with the Information Commission,
yeah,
you know, to access the assets of former government officials. And that case is still with the courts. When the courts shall have ruled, that would have served as a precedent. You know, but maybe the courts will say, well, every public official should make the asset declaration public. But until then, the laws of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission doesn't obligate any public official to making the asset declaration.
But common sense will tell you
exactly
that some of these people are armed robbers. They want to know exactly what you got. They're armed robbers. Because the law is clear that you go through the court system. Yeah. Even with the Freedom of Information Act, that particular part of looking at someone's asset declaration has to be done through the court. But they're standing on radio and saying, tell us what you got. They're armed robbers. They're big guns.
So far he's that's what Fahngon. So far he's violated absolutely no law. You know, he's declared his asset in keeping with the laws of the rules of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. He's not obligated to make it public. As a matter of fact, some of the times people set example with Sierra Leone. The Sierra Leonean president, Madabio, didn't make his asset public. You know, because the people use Sierra Leone as a benchmark for which we need to govern. You know, some of the times you wonder.
What school they went to.
You know, exactly. Liberia is the oldest independent republic, and then you're talking about anyway. But let's assume Sierra Leone is our benchmark. But even that president didn't make his asset public. I mean, there's been a whole lot of debate in Sierra Leone currently about Madabio's asset declaration and all of that. I mean, it is left with the president. There are too many personal information out there. I didn't make my asset declaration public. I mean, as little as I am, as insignificant as I am relative to the president, I didn't make my asset declaration public because there are a lot of personal, you know, information out there. Not just me, but also
would have given it to the armed robber to come after
there are spousal information, banking details, there are all those sorts of things, you know, and there is a precedent case like I highlighted earlier.
Even at the level of the LSCC and the GSC,
yeah,
there are special people who are privy to these kinds of information. It's not just everybody who's there. It's not just sitting in a drawer open that anybody can.
No, they got a safe.
But besides, the law requires that following the declaration, in fact, there is a safe that is, by the way, fireproof and all of that.
Yeah.
But the law requires that following the asset declaration of public officials, the LSCC now, the eye inspectors can go out in the field to verify and see whether these declarations that were made by the public officials are indeed actually what they own. So that is the aspect to which we are moving now. I love to see where the opposition or members of the press, you know, some of the times a few people can call the opposition, you know, some opposition press, because you wonder some of the times, and I'm a journalist myself, so I say this with a degree of caution, because there are a number of people out there, a number of press people out there that are independent, that are doing a wonderful job. But when you find out, I mean, when you see a media outlet working in concert with an opposition politician, such that the opposition politician will preempt what is going to come out in that particular outlet the day before, then you wonder how independent, you know, the paper is. Because we will see on social media some of the times that people come and say, oh, tomorrow listen to this particular outlet, they're coming out with something big. How do they know? You know, that's where you impugn the reputation of your outlet, you know, and that's where you know, people like us, government PR will come in and say, well, I mean, are you working at the behest of an opposition politician? I mean, you shouldn't be working. The government and the media shouldn't be friendly in the first place because they are there to, you know, scrutinize us. They're the conscience of society. But also, they should also not just be scrutinizing the government, but also scrutinizing civil society and the opposition. So you can have an opposition politician saying, well, I know exactly what's going to come up in XYZ newspaper tomorrow. You know, then it makes us to wonder. And then you think maybe these are just some of the fallovers from the 2017 elections. You know, there were a lot of speculations during the 2017 elections that, firstly, President Weah is not going to win. Secondly, he wasn't capable of leading. Thirdly, that if he wins, all of our international partners would have deserted us. That hasn't happened. He's leading soundly. This is one of the first presidents that walks the streets of Monrovia and people cheer him everywhere. I mean, I remember the last time doing the 16 days of activism, he walked from up Broad Street all the way down to the Anthony Tubman Stadium. And what happened? There were cheers throughout. Everywhere he go, Tupac community, Archbishop Michael Francis Rowe, and what have you. You know, the opposition will want to make you feel that he's unpopular, which is quite to the contrary. The reality doesn't show that. This man won 61% of the vote. If you want to talk about unpopularity, wait for another election so that we can know exactly whether he isn't popular with the people anymore. Not just a few politicians on social media. And by the way, our internet penetration is about less than 10% of the population. You know, so you want to talk about just because a few set of people go on Facebook and talk about, you know, the president is doing this or the president is doing that, or skew information. Because today they're not going to talk about the economic outlook from the AFDB. You're not going to hear that anywhere from, I mean, wouldn't maybe from those people, supporters of the government. But
perhaps if they did so, it's going to be slanted.
It's going to be slanted, you know, exactly. That's what they do all the time. Sometimes they pretend
but you do
like they
to
prevent
call
your
them
auspices.
You should call them the three Hebrew boys. And
okay, exactly.
That's it. Because I don't know how you will qualify such a group as a few individuals, even though they will bash me and say the three Hebrew boys. And they are not politicians. They were bag boys for their political leaders. Yeah. And they said it themselves. I didn't say it. They were on the cussing show when they said they were bag boys. And they can no longer...
They're on which show?
The cussing show. and the records will show that every, I will say, every perceived a politician of great stature by their followers who've ever been on that show have never won anything. I remember when I was in the States, Honorable Joseph Boakai, our papa, went on the cussing show. He lost. My senior brother, Honorable Ben Nayure, went on the cussing show. He lost. I saw Cummins recently on the cussing show. For him, he was already a loser before even going there. So the truth of the matter is, when you use a platform to denigrate and desecrate the office of the president, to the extent where you go to calling him an arrogant criminal, and that he rubs it in the face, in the faces of the Liberian people, I'm wondering what your 40 years overseas, when you were there, and he was out there touring refugee camps, sending people to hospital, giving people scholarships, providing food for them, taking care of our national team, coming back to the country as peace ambassador. Where were you? You were selling Coca-Cola, but you could not give us a plastic cup to drink. And you are going to come to this nation today and talk about law and order. Our Constitution is very specific and clear. It says you must be resident. It's called the resident clause. In the country. 10 years to elections. You came. You were given our prestigious honor the same year, and you were allowed to sit and talk with stakeholders and become a politician overnight to run in our elections. Is that not a violation? I heard you. I saw you. I was in the United States of America. You paraded an American passport and you said you carry, I'm quoting Alexander Cummins, I carry an American passport. Well, let me inform the world today. Only American citizens carry American passport. After saying that, you ran in our elections without denouncing your citizenship. And our Constitution is very clear that only a Liberian citizen.
If he didn't denounce his citizenship and from the Americas, quote unquote, you saying that,
right,
and that he was allowed to run, then he's a Liberian.
That's what I'm saying. But you're talking about people arrogantly defying or violating the laws of this country. What description can I give you on the two scenarios? Did you arrogantly, or since you say the president is arrogantly carrying out corruption in the faces of the Liberian people, and that he's in violation of our constitution, what will I say to you? Because arrogant will not be the word to use. You know, I have to use something far more than that, which I'll not do.
Please don't do. But let's look at the issue of governance, because it's also an important facet.
Yeah.
The spirit of coordination, cooperation, and collaboration between and amongst the three branches of the state has always been testing at times for our nascent democracy. In the last 1 year, we've seen a sort of good relationship, if not an excellent relationship, especially between the legislature on one hand and the executive on the other hand.
And we saw that just highlighted by the Deputy Press Secretary on this show. He talked about today, Friday. You know, he said that every Friday you have members of the legislature, you know, having a free walk-in at the president's office, which is basically, you know, a tenet of an open governance system. You know, that you have members of the first branch of government, the people's deputies, walking in on the president without necessarily having a formal invitation to go and just discuss some of the issues with him. And that is basically meeting our people, you know, because these are our people's representatives. These are people that have the opportunity to meet the different districts across the 73 districts across the country on a regular basis. So if you have their representatives going to the president's office, it's a tenet of good government. But also he enjoys a good relationship also with the courts system. He was recently at the opening. But all of this, all of the coordination and the good working relationship between the different, not just in Liberia, but in West Africa. How is that going to benefit young people? We're going to see entrepreneurship and employability of Liberian youth, but generally West African youth, improve. You know, entrepreneurship skills will be taught to them. That way they can access maybe different business opportunities out there. Maybe the 3 million that we put out there for them to benefit.
Let's look at the international front. Liberia's international relations under President Mugia. He started off with his first visit abroad as the president of the country to the AU. As soon as a day after the inaugurations, he flew out of here to be at the AU, and then later on went to France, and then Europe, and then he's been to the UN and the US. How would you describe you know, all of that? How would you package all of that?
Package it in a nutshell. The naysayer said his government will not be supported by the international community.
Yeah.
By the time he touches down, everybody will be gone. Well, the opposite happened. Everybody came running in. We've seen recently as Boakai catalog. The French came in, the British came in, the Germans came in, the Americans came in,
the European Union came in.
The EU came in, the World Bank came in, the IMF, everybody came in. But let's talk about him going outside and the image he has built on the outside. The world knows this man. Before coming to the presidency, every country in the world had a greater percentage of their population knowing the name George Weah. Because that's how they call it. Me, I call it Weah. But Weah.
Yesterday I saw the kids. Joe Weah, Joe Weah, Joe Weah. That was in Battery Factory.
Yeah.
But let's look at the ones in China.
The kids.
In China. Weah, Weah, Weah. So let's talk about this international relationship.
So when somebody writes on Facebook and says, and juxtapose the president's picture, and then put the President Trump picture and say, I wonder whether this man knows this guy. What are they talking about?
They should be talking about whether President Trump has written him a personal note. They should be talking about how they said that he will be confined at the United Nations General Assembly headquarters when in fact he was guest of the governor of Michigan.
Yeah.
When in fact he went over to West Point Military College. When in fact he was all over town. And because he did not attend or set up meeting with the stooges of the MICAT politician, then of course that part of America was a place that he was barred from, which is not true. But again, let's come back to this international relationship. Remember when the alleged $16 billion saga sprout out? Imagine you are calling our president a criminal, someone who knew nothing about anything. By the way, he constituted immediately an investigative team.
Yeah.
Then he went for, when they said, oh, that LSCC, LMP, and NSA look at it. So he said, okay, no problem. He brought the AU, the EU, hey, look at it. They put him from where, who will be your friend. He brought in the American government. He brought in the IMF. He brought in the World Bank. And then they said, okay, we'll wait. But instead of waiting, they were out there demonstrating. What I am saying, the 16 billion saga was in full swing when the German government released that, was it 14 million?
Yeah.
Then on top of it, the British government, 6 million.
Yeah.
On top of it, the American government, 112 million.
The EU,
you don't give...
The EU released about 24 million. 24 million.
24 million.
For the expansion of electricity.
Someone you believe is a criminal, you don't put money at their disposal. That defies common sense. Because you are calling this man a criminal, he stole your 16 billion, but the people that are supposed to believe you are giving him, or putting money, we should say, at his disposal. So having said that, it tells you that this president is a president of integrity. This president, look, 4.5 million. This president said Liberians will no longer be what? Spectators in their own economy. That he is going to work to improve Liberian businesses and make them functional in their own economy. We saw that quite recently. All the roads that are being paid, Liberian companies were like this. You know how they treated us for the last 12 years. But you know, the finance minister, let me conclude, the finance minister was able to put forth $4.5 million as mobilization fund for Liberian companies to be able to step up. And they're the ones building the roads. Least to say that that money did not come from outside. That money was a contribution from Mamusu in the market, in Relay Market, Maloko, Malipa. All of them, the money they put together is what is building inner city roads that is going to spin local economic growth and provide these various, communities with a sense to integrate. For example, Doe community could not connect with Claratown, but now they're connected. Yeah. And guess what? Yeah. They got street lights. They got street lights. Let's go to Bishop Michael Francis Road. What did I tell you this morning? They call it what?
Yeah, you said, I think I
call it
Lovers Avenue.
Lovers Lane.
Lovers, sorry.
Lane. You want to walk with your girlfriend? Go to Bishop Michael Francis Road in the evening, park your car, and walk the whole length. The whole place is brightened up. Go to Chubo. The people now come up on the road and just stand in disbelief. The lights are there. So, at the end of the day, you call him a criminal. We call him our hero.
And the thing about it, I just wanted to point out that the people don't believe some of the things that they hear out there from our regular politicians. They know that they've said that from time in memoriam, usually about every president. But this time around, it seems as if it's being ramped up. And I was listening to one of the radio programs yesterday, and they were talking about some of the things as horrendous as I wouldn't want to even mention on the radio, but about Fahngon natives and all of the different stuff. But President Weah, as a person, regardless of all of the different, characterizations and what have you, he seems extremely committed to the development of not just Liberia generally, but also specifically Liberian-owned businesses. Yesterday I live on the old road, and yesterday I was driving through. There's a site, that really caught my attention. It wasn't there before. It hasn't been there because I've been living on the over for a long time. It hasn't been there for like almost 10 years. Why was that? A new construction company. That's because the construction industry beginning to realize that this is an opportunity for them to, expand their businesses. And so they are popping up everywhere. 2 days ago, we saw that the Ministry of Public Works signed an agreement with construction companies, Liberian-owned, by the way, construction companies across the country. The minister reiterated the president's pledge that Liberians are not going to be spectators in their own economy. You know that 87 kilometers of road in Monrovia, Maigibi, Grand Bassa, and Bon County, that the president asked the Public Works Minister to develop. Most of them have been developed by Liberian-owned construction companies. With
what? Liberian money.
With Liberian money. And how did we get, some of the times people want to say, oh, but where the money coming from? Initially, the PSIP, which is basically public sector investment projects, we didn't have a lot of money that was set aside for that. Why? because there were a lot of expenditure for, there were a lot of money set aside for recurring expenditure, such as goods and services. Goods and services accounted for about $126 million of the budget. $126 million of the budget. Basically, what that went to were buying new cars, scratch car, gasoline, all of those stuff. That no longer is the case. You have a prudent fiscal and monetary manager in the person of President Weah, who's moved some of those allocations from goods and services and other places without affecting the essentials, such as agriculture, health, education, and what have you, to the public sector investment. Now we have that has increased by about 25%, whereas the money for that's why you don't see some of the government officials. I use my own car, by the way. You use your own car. Right. Government officials don't have the luxury of buying new cars because you don't even have money for that. The money is being put out for road construction. And people wonder where the money coming from.
You should make it clear. Our friends had 500 gallons of gasoline monthly.
Exactly.
We have had 80 gallons of gasoline 4 times now.
Yeah.
So calculate 4 times 8. Yeah. 320 gallons since I've been in this government for the whole year.
Yeah.
That tells you where we are.
And it tells you the priority.
But our friends have 500 gallons a month.
And it tells you the priority of the government. Some of the times if people come to you and say, well, your friends were making too many money for gasoline. I want you to give me gas. I ain't get gas. Now, honestly, that's the difference now. There's a different administration that prioritizes differently.
To give me a gas line. I said, did they ever tell you I was working at BRC?
Exactly.
And even if you were working there, you won't get it.
By the way, have you seen a rehab lately? I mean, not rehab, but yeah.
Rehab Road.
Rehab.
That's where I live. That's where I live. That's the new Miami.
That's the new. It's changing. Every little loop, every little hole, every little street corner has been. You see pavement, asphalt pavement going on there. I was there the other day.
Both asphalt and rigid pavement.
And I'm surprised it's turning into sinker. Yeah. And this is all happening in the first year. But there are a couple of things that happened in the first year that we should mention. We went. We just mentioned briefly the fact that this president has made university education free, and that is absolutely significant. We may not say that a lot. I mean, some of the times the opposition want to minimize the fact that since 1847, we haven't had the opportunity where poor families, women living, children living in the slum communities such as West Point, New Kuta, Clarendon, and what have you, we have kids going to school free of charge. Public universities, the University of Liberia, how do they call the one in the southeast? Tubman University College, and all of that. All of them now will be free of charge. And this is huge. This is an opportunity.
Colleges across the country.
And this is something, it shows the humongous political will of our president. He didn't ponder about whether or not, how we're going to pay, and what we're going to do, and what they're going to cost the national budget. The immediate priority to him was that poor families are feeling the brunt and the need to have some sort of relief. And that's the same thing he did when he sought to alleviate that burden of the family for the WIAC fees. That's the same thing he did when he said that President Salih Fletcher with this briefly, but it didn't work because there wasn't the political will to do so, when he said that no public official is going to make more than $7,800. The president said that within the first couple of months of his administration. And what that has done is save us millions of dollars.
$4.9
exactly.
million.
It saved us millions of dollars. And that money now is going to the development of the Buchanan Fairground Road, Banga Broad Street, the 2.7 kilometers of road in Clarendon. I was looking at the old picture the other day, how people used to walk on the plank to move from between Clarendon and the community. Now we have that road paved. We also have Logantown Broad Street paved. We are fixing the Johnsonville Road, the St. Michael Francis Road. I mean, yesterday, the people in Chuba, my community, which hadn't seen any form of pavement, in decades. Since Chuba was funded for decades. Now they're not just enjoying the roads, but they're also enjoying street lights.
I wanted to say something to the effect of to buttress what Boakai was saying, said that in another form. One of the things that fueled the policy of exclusion, the politics of exclusion, was Liberians were never thought of as educated people. Even right now, if you look in our banking sector and some of the big companies, Ghanaians and Nigerians are dominating the managerial positions. So at the end of the day, by making people pay high fees, you know the ordinary person in Lofa or Boko cannot afford that. You got to sell how many bags of cassava to even pay for the transportation for the person to come down to get education. The president felt that before. So at the end of the day, capacity building is on the plate of this president every day. How do we build? Because we build all the roads, all the hospitals, it'll be foreigners to maintain them. It'll be foreigners to work in the hospitals, in our factory and other areas. In our government buildings, you will see Ghanaians come and take over.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it was very important for this president to put his attention towards educating the next generation to take over and carry on from our generation, in my belief, that have screwed up so badly, killing 250,000 people, damaging our infrastructural facilities, and at the end of the day, crippling our economy and making us appear as destitute and what have you.
Let's talk about the social service delivery and availability.
Yeah,
in the
I mean,
last 1 year.
Exactly.
You know, power, water, those kinds of things.
And we should talk about that. You know that some of the things that the international community have said, basically they've said that the binding constraints, which is basically things that are tied together, the binding constraints of Liberia's development is power, energy sector, the energy and roads. You know, and that's why this president so far cited, he said, well, in order to develop any other thing, we need to make sure we develop the infrastructure, the roads, you know, but also develop the human capital, you know, because the human capital, basically, any development you do in this country, you got to develop the human capital. So as far as the social services are concerned, let's talk about health. For instance, the president made sure that budgetary allocation for that sector was increased by 12% from the last budget year. And what that has done is improve the facilities at the largest referral hospital in the country. Now we have a state-of-the-art medical laboratory. I mean, I was there the other day, and some of the machines you see are all basically computer operated. You know, you can just put in a specimen, and it tells you basically all of your some of the ailments that you have, all the different diagnoses. And this is something that we used to yearn for. This is something that we went overseas for. We don't just have that, but we also have a microbiology lab. And there's something that used to be missing. Remember when Liberians used to complain about the fact that we don't have a CT scanner, the one that assesses the brain and the spinal cord and all of that, so that we'll make accident, we'll have to transport people to Ghana. We do have that now. In the first year of President Weah. So when he was making $500,000 available, $500,000 available for the JFK during the first recast budget, and people were criticizing, those are some of the improvements.
And that was one of the first facilities he visited.
Exactly, that was one of the first facilities he visited.
His administration.
Everybody talks about all of these social services being delivered under this president in the first year. What major hospital is there between JFK and Magidi? The military hospital is going to solve that problem. Remember, the military hospital will not just cater
to military families alone.
Exactly. You can't bust your head in Sheffling or right on the Herrington Road and Magidi Road, and then they say they'll take you from there all the way to JFK. It's not going to happen. Your first stop will be that military hospital. Thankfully, they will have the state-of-the-art diagnostic center, you know, with the Chinese.
That's going to be the best in Africa.
That's going to be the best in the whole of Africa, the country. Yeah. But let's look at the fact that first, the president, under his leadership, the LEC issue was declared a national security issue, giving them the right to get out there quickly. He didn't stop there. He moved quickly with Executive Order 94. I have it right here.
Yeah.
Tax exempting them from wires and all these kind of things. Let's look at water. All these rusted pipes. Our friends who call themselves opposition today did not see it on the ground.
Not at all.
It's now that it's been changed with almost $20-something million from the EU and other partners around the world. People were still drinking water from rusted pipes. We can catalog some of the achievements.
But we should also talk about some of the development in the agricultural sector, since our people are listening from places, my own area in Wanjama, Lofa County, but other places. But before we talk about the agriculture sector, let's just point out that in addition to the community roles, there are other roles that are being planned as we speak. You know, currently, you know that the previous government must have negotiated, not must have, but they did negotiate for the role between Banga to Salaye But this government,
highway.
Exactly. But this leadership of President Weah made sure that corridor of road is not just going to start in Salaye, it's going to go as far as Vonjama.
Of course.
It's going to go as far as Vonjama.
Of course.
So when you talk about, people say the president has reduced the national agenda to community agenda, and I see that from one just student leader, for just one student leader that is, it's not true. The road from Sanikole, we have funding now for the road from Sanikole to Loga to the Ivorian border. We also have funding from Ganta to Tapeta to Zwedru. We also have funding from the Chinese to build the overhead bridge, 2 overhead bridges.
Yes.
One's going to be
Ministerial complex.
One's going to be at the Ministerial complex. The next going to be exactly. So we're going to have 2.
And the roads to Coca-Cola to from Red Lake to Coca-Cola to
Coca-Cola factory. So this year, in fact, we started last year, but this year is going to be declared the year of road construction. You're going to see the yellow machines come into your various districts. But I want to point out that also there's a lot happening in agriculture. Dr. Flomo is doing a lot as far as agriculture is concerned. Yesterday I was just reading a little narrative about a Liberian, I think Reverend Turbot or something, who's now, with the intervention of the government, you know that the World Bank, by the way, gave about $25 million for smallholders farmers, so that,
of course,
for smallholder farmers, so that agriculture is not just going to be on a subsistence level, but it's going to be on a commercial scale. So we have a little businessman now putting country rice on the market. So we're not going to be paying $200 million. You know that about $200 million.
So send it to out of the country.
Send out of the country just for
every year,
just for rice importation of rice alone. So the government's vision is to make sure, and Dr. Flomo was out there in Foya the other day, encouraging farmers. He was basically dedicating about 200 acres of land, but he encouraged farmers to make sure to get back to the soil, that the government is going to prioritize them. And how the government is doing that, in addition to the $25 million that was just given by the World Bank for smallholders farmers, the government is also giving contracts, and by the way, to local businesses too, to build market buildings in several counties, so that farmers can take their goods from these farms to the market. And they're also going to be working with the Ministry of Public Works to develop the roads, farm to market roads. And when some people say, and by the way, we've increased the budget for agriculture by about close to 50%. It's about 48% of previous budget. So people say, nothing happening in agriculture. They haven't read. Most times they don't read.
But it's
and
not
they just
that they
make
don't read.
Wild allegations.
They choose not to accept reality.
Yeah.
They live in the neighborhood of falsity.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they spread these thin little lies, and it's bought by just a handful of people. For example, while we talk about the gains made, let's look at the recent suspension as opposed to a ban on student politics on the university campus. Leggy, think for a moment. Article 11 of the Constitution is very clear that we are all equal before the law. But Article 15B of the same Constitution is very clear when it says that we have the right to academic, I'm quoting, academic freedom. What sense does it make for a group of people parading in khaki and berets to walk into a classroom in the name of student politics, jack your paper and you're doing your final, tear it up and say, we say no school today, after you studied for a whole semester?
I wonder the Liberia Council of Churches by Reverend Bishop Carter Brown got a good picture of what was obtaining at the university, because they issued sort of a condemnation of the ban of temporary ban of student politics by the university.
It's not even a temporary ban.
And then I was asking myself, when these students were agitating and throwing stones and burning tires,
thank you,
what did the Liberia Council of Churches have to say?
Well,
I didn't hear a statement from them, cautioning students that they have to be disciplined regardless of whatever grievances they must have had.
The best thing that God did was say, give unto Jesus Christ what is Jesus Christ, and unto Caesar what is Caesar. You see, when we have people operating on the canopy of religion, it seems as though they don't understand the separation of religion and state. They have to advise. We have to have them in the community as elders. But what baffles me is that you want student politics, but you don't even understand the nomenclature. You hear it. Student politics. Student politics, I'm a student of political science. I think by now everyone knows that. Student politics is different from local politics, which can be construed as community politics. It's different from national politics. It's also different from world politics. And I did world politics as one course. At the end of the day, you look at a campus. It's supposed to be between maybe Studa, Sim, or Soup. But no, you want to fight for 16 billion, you are an adult. You are above the age of 18. You voted. Leave the campus. Step outside. Criticize the president. Call Eugene Fahngon names. But you will go on the university campus in the name of being a student. Yes, you are a student, but you are also an adult. You are also a Liberian citizen. You have rights. The others too have rights under Article 15B to academic freedom. They should be free to acquire knowledge. That's why they go on the campus that is fenced. But you go there and say because you don't like the policy, the unspoken policy of constructive defiance from the president to make Liberia better. Therefore, you obstruct the learning process of the other students. It is unfair. And here is the kicker. There is a difference between a ban and a suspension.
Yeah.
It's a ban puts a stop completely. A suspension gives us the opportunity
to review and
dialogue on the issue and decide where we go forward.
And some of the times when you listen to the politicians on the radio, you just realize that their time is up. You know, I was listening to one of the politicians on one of the local radio stations yesterday, and I just realized, well, I mean, this guy is looking for relevance that that is done. Their time was time of maybe the 70s and the 80s and what have you. The relevance for such politicians now is not today. We have a president that was elected democratically by an overwhelming majority of the people.
As opposed to a military leader.
As opposed to a military leader. Then you dare call that a dictator? We have a president who's saying that, which is counterintuitive, by the way, by the most African leaders, for a leader to say basically that he wants to, decriminalize free speech. Usually you have a leader saying that they want to enforce some of the laws. And that law has been on the books of Liberia since the 70s.
Since the 70s.
This is a man who's come to power and say, I want to decriminalize free speech. Which, in fact, what that means is basically that you're not going to be sued for things
you say
criminally about the government. You're not going to be sued criminally about things you say about the government. This is a law that's been on the books for ages. Without any prodding, the president is saying, I want to decriminalize that. And you heard the pro tem talk about it. It's passed the House of Representatives. It's now at the House of Senate. The pro tem has said the president is keen on ensuring that law passes this for this sitting of the National Legislature, the second session of the National Legislature. The pro tem mentioned that during the opening. And so dictators don't do that. This is a democratic.
But he was even careful to qualify it by saying the president is a wicked dictator. He said the current legislature are collaborators of a wicked. I'm quoting him.
And listening to him yesterday, I was so disappointed. I've heard so much about this man. This is some of the things that you talk about paper tigers. Basically some of the things you see on paper, you think they're so big and so huge. And then somebody that probably would have done so much. And then you listen to him on the radio and say, "What is this? The Alaric Tupac?" I was so disappointed yesterday. And the callers expressed that. They were disappointed. All of the callers on the show expressed that. You have a person who basically is inarticulate, but also is expressing flawed ideas.
Well, when he said, for example, in our court, that the students who resisted the militants, and I call them militants for a reason, because they dress like militants, they act like militants, and they chant like militants. And at the end of the day, when they went on the campus that day, throwing stones, tearing people papers, and checking their book bags, the students who resisted them, this professor referred to them as thugs.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? As thugs. Called the president a wicked dictator, referred to him as a footballer turned president, and in trying to be demeaning. But this guy has outlived his usefulness.
Exactly. That's the point.
1982.
Let's go to the lines now and open the lines and talk.
Because we are in contemporary politics.
And get some
it's
feedback.
morning. 1982, you're talking about 38 years ago. Many of the students were not born.
514-096, 080-514-096. I think we have our first caller on the line. Good morning to you, caller. Good morning. Yes, go ahead. We're listening to you. Just one question. You have 30 seconds. One question. Others have to speak. All right, thank you for the concerns. 080-514-096 and 0776-089-713. Good morning, caller. Oh, we lost that caller. Let's take this one. Good morning to you, B. Jiple Ninswa.
Good morning, and
30 seconds.
Director.
30 seconds.
Let me say good morning to the technical minister and also the tough talking.
10 minutes, 10 seconds.
You know, like the woman has said, when the Arab groups during the refugee days, then when I came from according today, according to the humanitarian president, you know, you always feel sour when you see Liberians living life that they should not have lived. So that makes him to be the humanitarian president today. That when you see real community, you take it to be the Qatar. If you speak now that our medical now will be having their own hospital that today some destructive politicians are all called they get a two military in Ghana, they make reference to him, we should not make reference to our own all of this regime. And I know that this president has more to do, but Minister Fahngon and Minister Boakai, be aware that we have only 3 destructive politicians that ever did on the radio, and we are standing back for them to shoot them and make sure to make them understand that we're going for the next 1 year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Don't shoot nobody physically. I beg you, please. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, DJ, and let me say good morning to your 2 studios guests. I'm Musa Konen, and I'm speaking in my position as the Deputy Director General for Technical Service and Operation at the Liberian Agricultural Commodity Regulatory Authority. And I just wanted to just add on to what the brothers have just said in terms of the improvement this government has made, more especially in the agro sector. We can say to you that prior to this government coming, Liberia had no connection, absolutely no connection with international organizations that are in the agro sector. Today, Liberia is a member. We have restored Liberia membership to the RTCO, the International Cocoa Organization, and different other organizations. But most of that, today our farmers are making more money than they made in 15 years. Today, our farmers are a threat. Know how much for a ton of cocoa on the international market, locally, from the farm to market gate. This information has been disseminated. Things that never happen anytime they run, but because of time, there are more that this government can also that are happening now that did not happen then prior to this government coming. So all of what the guys have said, this government is on course, and we can show our people, most especially those in the agro sector, that agro sector will boom in Liberia in the short possible time will start being more serious. So I just wanted to suggest that to add on to what the guys have already said.
Thank you, Musa. We appreciate that. Let's hear from Bobby Allison. Good morning to you, Bobby. Good morning. Good morning, Bobby.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Yes, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I just called to commend my bosses of friends in studio. The guys, people sort of get this revealed, send me the places we during the 2 jobs. At least they are clearly aired that they are on air this morning, because in Maryland County, a lot of negative people say despite EFBC on the air, but the boss of Hope Radio, under the leadership of the CEO, Dr. Bofa Chimo, to speak up that station relay
the MBC program, they are happy to hear all of the good things that the government is doing. But one thing they left out, the road from Balanceville to New Georgia Estates. They left that road also. I think they need to include that into the discussion. Thank you.
I got a whole list here. I'll read it out to the Liberian people.
Let me just also say that in the next 3 or 4 days, all of the substations across the country will be operational. Oh, good morning to you, caller. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, let's take this one. Good morning to you, Sekou Damaru Konem. I mean, Sekou Kalasco. Good morning. Yeah, I'm struggling to pronounce your name, Sekou. Sorry about that.
Anyway, thank you, lady. Thanks for making very sense to the discussion. And, you know, when Eugene and Boakai speak, sometimes you sort of worry. But basically, lady, I've called to, normally when I'm on this kind of programs, I had to call you. But because of this, specifically, I would like to call this name. You know, and my attention is due to the latest report which Boakai spoke about initially, you know, coming from the African Development Bank about the progress that has been made by this government. But again, when you listen to somebody who calls himself a senior politician or a political leader of a political party, turning into a talk show host from one radio station to another, trying to disprove beyond all reasonable doubt in a very egocentric manner that the country is retrogressing in terms of the leadership that this president has provided. And you read this report coming from our partner, an international partner. And you know, they speak to the fact that these guys, they bring more sincerity. I'm talking about Alexander Cummings. They bring more sincerity to the discussion. The only reason, like the statement he made, that it is time for us to take our country back. They feel that this country belongs to a certain group of people, a certain group of people, even though they have been given the opportunity by more than 60% of the population of our country, but they believe that this country should not move ahead. But what I say this to you is the Cummings and his legs, that this country is moving fast and is moving at a pace that you, in order looking at President Weah, will not succeed. And you know, we live and see the reality that this man has the country at heart, and he has come to change the dynamic of our situation, the situation that was not created by him, the situation that he met as the president, but he's trying beyond everything to make sure that the Liberian people benefit tremendously from the natural resources of our country, and he will not relent because this is his job. And thanks to you, legend, thanks to Boakai, thanks to every one of the team that are making this dream a reality.
Thank you, Sekou Damasco. Good morning to you and good night. Goodbye. I finally got that name right, Damasco, yes. So finally, let's
Damaro.
Kalasco
Damaro. And then you can add the Jumande. Sekou Kalasco Damaro Jumande.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Let's
take this one. Good morning, caller. Good morning. Don't sleep on me. Good morning. Okay. Well, time is fast spent. Let's wrap up. Final words.
You know, I mean, I just want to thank the callers. I want to thank Sekou Kalasco Damaro for his call. He highlighted some of the things that we talked about, and the fact that, you know, politicians will be politicians. You know, some of the times you listen to the different politics from across the world, and you realize that people can be so fixated in the fact that they've lost the election and they want to come back. And that's exactly the reality that's obtaining in Liberia. You know, there was sour grapes from the 2007 elections. People are still bitter. This is the first time in our country's history where we've had a whole transition, you know, of youthful leaders. This hasn't happened since universal suffrage was obtained in 1951. Where we have a whole set of leaders leaving, you know, power, and a new set of leaders, you know, are basically youthful, attaining the authority of the state. Honor the distinguished stewardship of President George Weah. A couple of things he's done I just want to talk about. He's rescued D2 Memorial High School He's completed and reconditioned JFK, which I highlighted, refurbishing the lab and making sure that we have, in fact, a microbiology lab. He's constructed Rural Community Road. He's constructed Logan Town Broad Street Road. He's built 108 housing units for low-income earners. That's going to be going offline. Online very shortly. He's constructed the Banga Broad Street, the Buchanan Fairground Road. He's placed 2,330 some more health workers on the payroll. We've also sent half a dozen,
all of this in a period of 11 months.
In a period of 11 months. He also sent about nearly 2 dozen health workers overseas to specialize. So they're not going to just be doctors. We're going to have urologists, endocrinologists, anesthesiologists, all of these people coming back. So that we're not going to be going to places like Ghana or other places to look for health care. We also have the construction of Chuba Road. We just talked about just now on this show. The people that were celebrating, they have at least now street lights on their road, and I heard somebody talking about the fact that street lights were there before. That's not true. I spoke to the deputy managing director of the LEC, and he said he was personally involved in making sure that street lights were on Chuba Road, and that's going to be replicated across all of the different community roads that's being constructed. Fahngon just talked about the fact that Archbishop Michael Francis Road is now called what? The Lovers Lane. We have people walking there at night. We also established a computer laboratory at the UL, but we've put Wi-Fi. But most importantly, we made public university education free across the country. That's under the stewardship of President George Manuel Weah, and a couple of other things to be cited by my colleague Eugene Fahngon.
Well, thank you, Leggy, and I will close on the comment Kalasco made, but I will just say to you, the purple agenda for prosperity and development is on course. And we have Pillar 1, which is power to the people. The goal is to empower Liberians with the tools to gain control of their lives, reaching the furthest first and leaving no one behind. We've seen that it's playing across the length and breadth of this nation, whether it be from this university level, healthcare level, and what have you. We have Pillar 2, which is economy and jobs. The goal is a stable macroeconomic environment, enabling private sector-led economy that Minister Tue talked about just here the other day. And with that kind of growth, that will see greater competitiveness and the diversification of the entire economy. We have Pillar 3, which is sustaining the peace. You talk about it, you ask a question relative to it. We're looking to promote a more peaceful and united society that enables economic transformation and sustainable development. We also have Pillar 4. The goal is very clear. Pillar 4 has to do with governance and transparency, and that is an inclusive and accountable public sector for shared prosperity and sustainable development. We've seen that with how the president is proceeding relative to whatever case of even corruption that sparks up. But there was a guy who wanted us to name the roads. I could leave this for your studio people to kind of take. You can see the list. He was cataloging some of them. If I go through it right now, it'll take about 2 minutes of your time.
It will take about 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, the list is too long. The list is too long. It's too long of all the roads.
All of this in 11 months.
I'm sure maybe if the president is listening, he will say, well, why you can't name it? You scared? Name it, let the people hear it. The roads that I'm working on. Dry Rice Market, Johnsonville.
Yeah.
Fairground,
which is 11 kilometers. Cut a kilometer.
Yes. Dry Rice Market, Johnsonville, 11.5 kilometers. Fairground Road, Buchanan City, 1.5 kilometers. Dwazon Sand Beach Road, 1 kilometer. Sofe Road, 1.2 kilometer. VOA ERWA Community Access Road, 1.5 kilometer. Matema Road, 1.7 kilometer. ERWA R2 Community Access Road, 1 kilometer. Copper Farm Jangaba Road, 1 kilometer. Tinker Village, the telecom area road there, 2.2 kilometers. Soul Cleaner Road, 2.5 kilometers. Rehab Community Road, 2.5 kilometers. And the Morris Farm Road. We can also continue with Dakwitan Road, 2 kilometers. Fantitan Road, over half a kilometer.
Yeah.
Banja Community Road, 2.5 kilometer. Inner GSA Road, half kilometer. AB Toba, 12 houses, bypass, 75. See, friends, the list is too long. So let me stop there and hit on what Kalasco said about the midget politician. Let us be clear. When he made that statement that we will work, I'm quoting Alexander Kumi, we will work to take back our country. The only thing that came to mind was that I saw on the seal the love of liberty brought us here. And I asked myself, what about the people they met here? Then I turned around and asked myself, January 7th was put into place as Pioneers Day. What about the Indigenous Day? Do we really want to go back to take our country back? Let me use the state radio, not to threaten Alexander Cummings, but to warn him that if you decide to come back to take your country, bring along Matilda Newport that used the first cannon. The first cannon to commit the first genocide in our country. Yeah. Bring back the cannon of Matilda Newport because you will meet us here. And we will not pull back.
On that note, this is
but also he has to first pass Prince Johnson and you know, Charles Bromskin and Joseph Boakai and all of that, you know. Because I mean,
gentlemen,
the president was first. He was the faith.
Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Bye bye.